In our increasingly electrified society, that's where a resilient grid matters most. ITC Great Plains is ensuring the greater grid can meet our energy needs now and long into the future. Learn more at itc-holdings.com.
Good evening and welcome to the Kansas Legislature. I am your moderator this evening, Becky Kiser, and we are live from the studios of Smoky Hills Public Television in Bunker Hill. Very happy to have you with us this evening. Again, I want to remind you right at the top, we have our legislators. We'll be visiting with them this evening, and you have the opportunity to find out what you need to know about what's going on in Topeka, ask some questions, maybe voice some concerns, and there's a toll-free number you can call to do that, 1-800-337-4788. Again, I'm Becky Kiser from Hayes with Eagle Communications. I work in the news area for Hayes Post and also Eagle Radio, and I'm also a policy fellow for the Docking Institute of Public Affairs at Fort Hays State University, and we appreciate their partnership for the show this evening, and of course our sponsor, ITC Great Plains. First thing we want to do this evening is have our legislators introduce themselves. I know one that I've met before, the other two I have not met before, so it's a very great honor for me to find out who they are. First of all, I am going to introduce them at the table and then allow them to talk a little bit about what committees they're on. We have with us, closest to me is Representative Susan Concannon of Beloit, and also furthest from me is Representative Bill Clifford. He is from Garden City, and then right in the middle this evening is Representative Adam Smith from Weskan. So Susan, let's go back and start with you this evening from Beloit, and you are from North Central Kansas, of course. Tell us a little bit about the activities that you do on the committees.
Okay, well, thank you, Becky. So this is my 10th year in the legislature. I serve on appropriations. I chair a committee called Children and Seniors. We work a lot with foster care issues, child welfare, and senior issues, obviously, nursing home, long-term care. And then I also, a new committee for me this year is Judiciary. And then I serve on some interim committees. I chair a senior care task force, I chair a child welfare oversight, and I also serve on the Bob Bethel Can Care Oversight Committee.
So those are some committees that have been pretty active in recent years and this year as well.
Yes.
Hopefully
yes.
We'll talk a little bit about those.
Yeah.
What are you working on right now in those areas exactly?
In child welfare?
Yes,
well, specifically we are working on communication between DCF, Department of Children and Families, with law enforcement. That's one issue that's come up, that's bubbled to the top. We've got contracts coming up for the providers throughout the state for foster care, and that's just some of the things. There's an Office of the Child Advocate that is a new position.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions about that, well, I encourage you to give us a call. Let's move on then, and we want to talk to Dr. Clifford from Garden City, and tell us a little bit about your committees, Bill.
Well, I'm also the new guy here. I'm in my first month in the legislature. I'm thrilled to be representing the 122nd District, although it's a little bit bittersweet. As you know, I replaced the late Representative Russ Jennings,
Exactly.
who was a good friend of all of us. I'm a physician, so I have been assigned to the Health Committee, and I'm thrilled to have a seat at that table because we have a lot of big issues coming down the pipeline concerning health. Also serve on the Veterans Committee. I'm an Air Force veteran, as is my wife. I'm on local government. I was county commissioner for 7 years, so it's a good fit. And my big committee right now is Social Services Budget Committee. As you'll probably hear tonight, the budget committees are real busy this time of year to get things to the appropriators. So very pleased and glad to be on here with you tonight with my colleagues.
Is it difficult to be a newbie and learn what has to happen and in what order?
Yes, I mean, I'm physically a newbie, but I know quite a few people. But yes, there is a learning process. It's kind of fun. I tell folks I feel like I've gone away to college. I even get to bring my laundry home.
Well, we welcome you in this evening. Glad to have you here. And then finally, we want to talk to Adam Smith, who is from Weskan, clear out in western Kansas.
Clear out there, yes.
Tell us about your committees, Adam.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Smoky Hills Public Television for hosting the show and the invitation to join you, and certainly thank the sponsors, ITC, Great Plains, and the Docking Institute for hosting this. The legislators love coming on here, so thank you again for that opportunity. I serve on several committees. I serve on a new water committee that was created last year. You have what's called standing committees that are kind of the same from year to year, and occasionally leadership will create new committees to address specific needs. And we just this morning got released our new mega water bill. We can go into detail on that a little bit later if you want to, but it's about 183-page bill, and I read a little bit of it this morning in amongst my other tasks in the office, but it's a lot to digest, so we're going to be tackling that next week. In addition to Water Committee, I also serve on the Rules Committee in the House, which is an interesting committee sometimes. It handles any of the rules disputes, parliamentary procedure, things that happen on the House floor. If there's ever a challenge to the rules, the committee will make a ruling on a certain motion or something that happens on the House floor. I also serve on the Ag and Natural Resources Budget Committee, the Redistricting Committee, which has been an interesting one. It has. And I currently serve as chairman of the House Taxation Committee.
And how long have you been a legislator, Adam?
This is my 6th year.
6 years, all right. Well, you mentioned redistricting. There was some movement on that, a lot of movement this week. Let's just start with that. Explain what it is we're talking about. This is really a national issue, but obviously affects what happens in Kansas. And there was a veto involved with the governor, and things have changed since then. So bring us up to date, Adam.
Certainly, yes. This week was quite interesting with some of the redistricting activity. First of all, I don't want to oversimplify things, but I'll take a step back and explain that every 10 years, with the results of the census, you have to redistrict because congressional seats, House and Senate seats, and the State Board of Education seats all have to be equal in population, or as equal as possible. So we have to redraw the lines based on population changes. Now, what's happened currently in the session, we don't pass all the maps at once. We're tackling the congressional map right now. Pretty soon we're going to be starting on the House and Senate district maps, and then the State Board of Education. The one that got vetoed was the Congressional District Map for Kansas. It was passed out, was that last week it got passed out, and then the governor did veto that. It went to the Senate first since it was in a Senate bill. They had some struggles getting it vetoed over there. It failed the first day. They made a motion to reconsider, and it was successful the day after that. It came over to the House chamber. The House did override that as well. There's kind of a flow chart on how that is handled. The congressional map is a little bit different than the state districts, to where it doesn't automatically go to the court for review. There has to be a challenge. I haven't heard if there's intended to be a challenge on that yet or not, but one of the reasons that we tackled that one first is if there is a challenge in court, that still gives us time to redraw another map before the courts have to redraw that.
And I guess the thing that people need to be aware of, and that legislators have been emphasizing, is this is based, as you said, on population. And those of us in western Kansas know that there are not as many people who live in western Kansas as in eastern Kansas.
That's absolutely correct. And you know, I'm from northwest Kansas, and northwest Kansas, actually we lost a little bit, we gained a little bit in certain areas. It was a little balanced. My district specifically will have to grow a little bit, but not much. Southwest and southeast Kansas, if you look at a colorized map of the population loss, over the last 10 years we've lost some significant population, so all those districts will have to shift. Like I said, we haven't tackled the actual House and Senate districts yet to see how those will be affected, but yes, anytime you have a large population decline in one area, the entire area has to grow size-wise to get that population back.
And then we're all part of the Big First District, and that is, it really is the Big First.
Well, and it had to grow this year. And as it moved east, there's a lot of discussion now about Lawrence being included in the Big First. And right or wrong, philosophically, if we hadn't added a city to get those numbers, we would have had to have added numerous counties, and the map would have grown quite a bit geographically.
It's hard to believe that the Big First could get bigger, but I mean, we were presented maps which went border to border, and the octopus map had the Big First in southeast Kansas. So I think we got it right. In fact, I dare the courts to do it better. So we'll see.
So Adam, you said you weren't aware of any challenge or any upcoming.
Right, and right now the bill has been, the override has went through, it's been enrolled. I believe I'm not sure what the time frame is on how long they have to issue a challenge, but if they do it too late, there's a certain amount of time that the courts have to take a look at that. As long as they can get it done early enough and the legislature is still in session, we can have another crack at a new map. If not, the courts will be left withdrawing it, which is what happened 10 years ago. Time ran out and the courts ended up drawing congressional maps,
That's right,
House
I'd
and
forgotten
Senate
that,
maps,
yes.
everything.
So is Kansas any different than maybe some other states that kind of have an aging rural population? Where are they undergoing this kind of concerns as well and having to look at their redistricting? What do you think, Susan?
Yeah, other states are going through the same issues, and some of them are a little ahead of us in the process. I think that there's already been one challenge in court. What state was that?
I have trouble enough keeping up with Kansas.
Too many.
I don't recall. It starts with a vowel. I do remember that. But, anyway, it has been challenged, and the map drawers, the state won that challenge in court. So it will be challenged. This will be challenged, but hopefully soon. There's a misnomer that if it goes to court system, that the courts then automatically would that we're just turning it over to have the court system draw the maps. But that's, like Adam explained, it'll come back to us if it's done in time.
You'll have to keep us up to date, Adam.
Yeah, and the biggest deadline we're up against is June 1st is the filing deadline for the elections. And so we have to, we're done kind of in that end of March time. We come back late April and into May for veto session. I believe if we hit that May 1st, I don't know that date for sure, but you know, the time is very limited there on how much time we would have if we don't have a map that is okayed by the courts by May 1st. We might have the courts doing that for us, but hopefully we can get this taken care of quickly.
We'll see what happens. We want to go to the phones now, and a reminder that you can make a toll-free phone call to our legislators this evening, 1-800-337-4788. We have on the phone with us now Nick from Victoria. Nick, what is your question of the legislators this evening?
Well, I just had a couple things I was interested in what the legislators thought about. You guys were just talking about the rural population changes, and I was wondering if they have any ideas on how to address kind of the decline over time in the rural areas. And also, a lot of them have oversight over state agencies under their committees. And I'd just be interested to hear where they think the condition of state agencies are over the last couple of years.
Okay, well, let's start. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Anything else, Nick? Okay, we got that then. So Nick wanted to know about, obviously we know that the entire state has concerns about people leaving the state or not being retained. I know that's one of the issues that a lot of cities, small towns are talking about. In Hayes, where I work and cover news there with the city commission, that's of prime importance to them as well, how to retain people. So what are some of the ideas do you think, Susan, that might be available to help keep people from moving out of a rural area?
Aha!
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
It's a huge question.
It is a huge question. You know, we work on a lot of different opportunities we have with economic development, and we just this week gave out the CDBG. Help me with that, what that stands for.
Community
Development
Block
Grants.
Yes.
Yeah, so we participated in the distribution of those checks to communities for different projects that they had applied to in their areas. And, you know, we're working on some housing issues. We've got a problem with housing where the cost of building the cost of building is high, but then the homes in the rural areas are appraised at a lower amount. So there's this gap, and so we're working on trying to get some funding for that, and working on that through the Spark funds. And those are just some ideas that come to my head right off the bat. That's not an area I work with most of the time, so but appropriations touches on it a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I've spent the last 7 years as a county commissioner of Finney County, and so we were very proactive about housing, about daycare, about recruiting companies. Dell Computers is not moving to Finney County, Kansas, but we have Empirical, DFA came out and invested $300 million. I've always said that one thing we do well is export children from western Kansas. And we're really making an effort to make our communities more attractive. In fact, one of our new eye surgeon partners came from Beloit, Kansas to Garden City, and we're thrilled to have Dr. Kimple. So I think there's a sense in the legislature that the 2030 census is coming, and we could lose a congressional seat in Kansas.
Really?
If we don't do something, especially about loss in the rural communities. Obviously, you heard about the Apex legislation that went through this week, but
Yes.
there are a lot of other initiatives in water and commerce to make sure we gain and count our population.
Well, it's interesting you talked about daycare as well, and that's something that I've heard in Hayes and then across the state of Kansas having problems, well actually nationally I guess, problems with daycare being available and being affordable and a good placement for employees. Do they want to work there, and are they making good money? So they come together. You kind of have to have that daycare. You've got to have available housing that's affordable, and good schools for that before you can even begin to attract people to the area and have the jobs available. So it all kind of comes together.
It does.
What do you think? Tell us, Adam, how things are,
Well,
especially in small town. That's
right,
different.
I've actually got an answer that kind of addresses both of his questions. We are hearing a lot I'm on one budget committee and then in the tax committee. Something that I've heard a lot, it was kind of forced on us, but I think in hindsight, maybe it was something that was necessary. With the pandemic, a lot of people were forced to work from home. That was an option they didn't really have. Maybe employers didn't want to provide that option before. And what they've found after the last 2 years is productivity has increased. We've heard from some state agencies that probably won't be going back to full-time employment in the office because their employees are so productive at home. They are able to do the work. They're so much more efficient, and it's really helping out. And that is one of the items that helps people. If they can do their job from home, as long as they have internet,
right?
As long as they have good connection, which leads into another topic, but. That's something it's really surprised me. It was one of those things that was forced on us due to the pandemic, but it's actually turned out to be kind of a good thing.
The rural broadband issue. We hear a little bit about that, and it's not new in Kansas, but it's really come to the forefront now about how important it is, especially in the rural areas. But when you say state agencies, are you talking about in Topeka or offices located throughout Kansas, satellite offices?
All the way throughout Kansas.
Throughout the
yes.
state.
We heard from Department of Revenue and Tax the other day about how they've got several people that are off-site in different areas, and most of them in Topeka, but also in their satellite offices. They're working from home during the pandemic, and they don't want to come back to work. Everything is doing great. The department is happy. They're being very efficient at home and being very productive. So,
did you hear, is it more cost efficient? Do you know?
yes. Yes.
So we're saving some tax dollars maybe?
We are,
Maybe.
yes.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, one comment I might make, because the caller asked about the sort of the condition of state agencies.
Yes.
There's a lot of attention to taking care of state employees. As you know, we have a budget surplus right now, and one of the things we're going to do is shore up the underfunding of CAPERS. And the number I've seen lately is about $1 billion may go into CAPERS to help make up the $5 billion deficit that's accumulated over the years. Plus, the governor has recommended, and I think the legislature will ratify or follow through on a pay raise for state employees. So, I mean, we're like any other employer. We're competing, wages are rising, and the legislature is responding to that.
And that $1 billion will put us over 80% funded for CAPERS, which we dropped as low as 59% funded and a few years back. So this is great. And can I comment on the oversight? My committees touch DCF and KDAD's Department of Aging and Disabilities and KDHE. KDHE hasn't really changed a lot. I mean, the secretary has changed, but I would say that with KDAD's and some of the Medicaid, the CanCare issues have really shown a lot of improvements. We still have a few payment issues that are delayed, and some of the pre-authorizations are frustrating, but that's going well. But where we're seeing some significant improvement is with DCF. We still have some major issues with foster care in Kansas, but we qualified for some federal funding with Families First, and that is an opportunity to put some funding into programs to help families stay together before the children are taken into foster care. So we're trying to help out with the families on the front end. And this has actually shown in the last year that we're 1,000 kids less than we were a year ago. And
that's significant.
Yeah, and 90% of the homes that were touched with this Families First program were, those children did not enter foster care. So we think that we're seeing some success there, but there's still a long way to go. We have some real problems.
Do we have enough foster families in Kansas?
No, we always need more foster families. Yeah, we need a lot of foster families. The thing we really need is social workers. They're not, the caseload for each social worker is too high. They're not able to have the oversight over the cases that, so 20 children or 20 cases for them is too many. And
well, especially when you're talking about children and you that's just such a precious resource.
And we've had some tragic things happen in Kansas,
yes.
And it's been in the news. I worked with the ranking Democrat on my committee to submit a request for an audit, and that was accepted. Those results should be coming out at the end of February or early March, and really looking forward to what they present to that. And then the Oversight Committee that I chair is brand new. We just got that bill passed last year, and it went into effect July 1st. And so we've been doing some work with that. And right now, it's just more informational than anything else, but trying to find out where the gaps are, what we need to work on.
So you feel like we're headed in the right direction then?
I hope so. Yeah, I do.
We want to remind you that if you have questions or comments for our legislators this evening, please give us a call. It's toll-free, 1-800-337-4673. 4788. Again, we're visiting tonight with Representative Susan Concannon of Beloit, and in the middle we have Representative Adam Smith from Weskan and also Representative Bill Clifford from Garden City. Adam, I wanted to come back to you because you said the magic word to those of us in Hays, water, which is a significant issue for people who live in Hays, and you are familiar with that, and you talked about something new to share with us.
Yes, and it's so new. I just had a 30,000 foot overview of it this morning, so I made some notes. I think I misspoke earlier. I said it was a 183-page bill. It's a 283-page bill.
So you got through all that, right? You read all that this morning?
No, I didn't. It's for those of you that might want to be interested in some bedtime material to go to sleep. It's House Bill 2686, and it is a result of the past year. We have been taking a look at all of the agencies, departments within the state that deal with water. There's between 15 and 20 different agencies that have some sort of control, permitting authority, different obligations and responsibilities with water. What we have heard from a lot of people is there's a lot of redundancy, and it would be nice if there was some consolidation, and it's just a kind of a one-stop shop for water. This bill, what it is doing, it is creating a new executive branch of government, the Department of Water and Environment. It is abolishing the Division of Environment under current KDHE and moving that into the Department of Water and Environment. Just a few things. I took some notes here. It merges the Water Office, the Kansas Water Office, the Division of Conservation and Division of Water Resources from the Department of Ag into the new KDNWE is what it would be called, Kansas Department of Water and Environment. It establishes a new fund for that. It uses the funds that are currently appropriated for the existing agencies and departments, consolidates them into a new fund specifically for water and environment. Out in my area, western Kansas and south central Kansas, we talk a lot about groundwater resources. And you'll hear this acronym GMD. It's a Groundwater Management District. It does make a lot of changes to the way the groundwater management districts are operated and organized. It changes a little bit about the elections, the way the boards are made up, financial reporting requirements to the new department, and some oversight. So like I said, I read through it briefly at first, and then I read through it and dug in a little bit, and I did not have time to really get into the groundwater districts, because that's going to be very important out in northwest Kansas. If you're interested, that's sections 10 through 14 of the bill. There's 100 and some different sections, but each section deals with a different topic. But yeah, it's a big bill. We're going to start working on it next week, have some hearings, and we'll see where it goes.
And is that available online?
It is at the KS Legislature website. You can go in under bills and laws and type in 2686, and it will bring that up. Be careful you don't hit the print button unless you have a full ream of paper ready to go.
I bet. Well, I said something about that being a buzzword, I guess, for Hays, because as I'm sure you all know, Hays is looking for, or has acquired, a long-term water resource by the purchase of the R9 Ranch in Edwards County in conjunction with the city of Russell. But it's a very long process in moving this water, and as I understand it, part of what's happening is new in the state, and people want to be very careful about making sure that it's fair to everybody involved, because water is a precious resource, especially in western Kansas.
I've been attending the water committee. My morning committees are not too busy, and it's just fascinating and mind-boggling. But one of the things citizens don't think about is we are paying the Corps of Engineers for storage capacity in some of our state reservoirs. And about 30 years from now, we have over $100 million due to the federal government for that storage of water. And we have to have the water. But part of the use of our surplus will be to take care of debts like that, because we wouldn't have the money to pay a balloon of $100 million. So I'm not sure that's in the bill, Adam, but I've heard talk about those debts being paid as one of the useful things with the surplus we have.
Well, Bill, let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned earlier, you were talking about the Apex bill, and there is a surplus. Good news, the state does have a surplus in the budget, but like just your own budgets at home, there's a temptation to, it's burning a hole in your pocket. We don't really want to do that. Explain to us what the Apex bill, and that has been in the news, it's been discussed recently.
Sure, and obviously the Department of Commerce brought that from the governor's administration to the legislature. When it hit the Senate, there was, I think, time pressure. It was at least communicated that way, and the Senate pushed it out pretty quick. And when it got to the House, the flaws in that concept were easily discovered. The House and Chairman Tarwater, who heads Commerce in the House, really slowed the process down to get it right, to put safeguards in, to put guardrails on it, so the state wasn't holding the bag for an unsuccessful company. I mean, we're talking about an economic development arena we've not been able to play in Kansas. Companies that are willing to come in with $1 billion investment.
Billion with a B. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I know in D.C. they talk about trillions, but billions still matter in Kansas. Again, looking ahead to the 2030 census, we have to find a way to grow this state. And I think the legislature cooperated and worked well with the governor to develop the Apex tool. It isn't just aimed at one company. It has been offered to one company this year, but the legislature has enabled the governor, or whoever is governor, to approach one company or work with one company each year. There's a sunset on it as well. Again, we in the legislature need to be at the table, and we need to control this process, especially when we're talking about writing checks for $600 million and refunding some of the payroll. That's putting a dent in our surplus of $3 billion. So we have to look at the other asks, like food sales tax reduction, property tax relief, and our fund for refunding of capers, and also a rainy day fund. I think we all really would like to see us fund a rainy day fund for the day when we don't have a big surplus. So
is that just like a savings account? Would that be an accurate description? Like
Yes.
we should all have?
It's actually called the Budget Stabilization Fund. It is a specific fund set aside. It doesn't have any money in it right now. We put a little bit of money in a couple of years ago, and it was utilized actually during the pandemic because we weren't sure what the revenues were going to look like. But yes, that is a fund. It's active at the state level.
Susan, you were going to say something?
Oh, just that.
Okay.
That there was nothing in it.
So I guess so really, Bill, what you're talking about is just the guardrails of making sure that the state is getting what it needs and the value that it needs to get out of this, and that companies can't come in and then just kind of fly by night and leave, and then the state is left holding the bag for this
Correct.
kind of investment.
And there are stories all over this country about projects that have fizzled and the states were left holding the bag. But again, this puts us in play for companies that are unprecedented in Kansas. We still don't know exactly who it is.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
No hints,
Go ahead,
huh?
Susan.
Well, there's some mystery behind it, but there's no mystery really about the bill that we passed. As was said, I don't know which one of you two said it, but it's a tool.
Right.
Right. This is a bill that we passed that's an opportunity for us to bring in some economic development to Kansas. And we keep hearing that this one that's coming is very special and it could be a game changer.
Well, we'll find out. We'll look
Yes.
forward to it. We have a phone caller now from Waukene. Ben is on the phone with us. Ben, what questions do you have of the legislators this evening?
Hi, Becky. Thanks for taking my call. I want to ask the doctor, is there anything being done to try and get doctors into rural hospitals?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
To bring doctors
Bring
to
doctors
rural
to
hospitals.
rural
Oh,
hospitals.
doctors to rural hospitals. Oh, well, we'll let our doctor
Well,
expert
we
here
have two
answer
experts on that, since Representative Concannon's husband, Craig, is a rural physician.
Oh, okay, great.
I think one of the exciting things that's going on right now in Kansas is the opening of a new medical school in Wichita. An osteopathic school is accepting students actually in the next few months. It will open in August, and our hospital in Finney County, St. Catherine Hospital, is actually affiliated. I'm not sure if you are in Beloit. We will have medical students come out. What we've discovered is that people tend to go where they train. So if we can get young men and women to train in our rural communities, there's a higher likelihood of them staying there. So I'm very excited about that prospect.
I know over the years, in years past, there have been programs where the state helps pay for or maybe forgives some of the tuition of medical students who do go to small areas?
Yeah, there's a Rural Scholars in Healthcare program, and we've had several, actually mainly young women, several of them worked in our office, have been able to enter that program, and they're returning to Western Kansas.
Excellent.
Plus, we have the Kansas State, the student loan plan, that if they go to KU, and are commit to a rural area, that their tuition's paid. It's limited to a certain number of students, but I'm actually working with that bill right now because we have a student in Salina, a resident in Salina, that's actually wanting to do a fellowship in sports medicine. And so we're looking at changing the statute to let them do a fellowship in a particular area, but they'll go do their fellowship and then come back and finish their last year of their residency. And as long as they still go to their commitment to the rural area, they would still be a primary care and be fulfilling the obligations they have to that scholarship.
I might say that, I came out of the military to Garden City as a physician, as did my wife. She's an attorney. Garden City was an attractive community. It was a place where I wanted to raise my children. So I think, again, it goes back to economic development, child care, schools, making communities attractive for people to come back and raise their families there.
Schools are important. I just was going to add also that that they do tend to stay where they train, the students do, so we need more resident seats. The residencies they're not growing, even though we are adding 85 students a year with this new med school. So that's going to be, we've got 4 years now before they graduate in order to work on getting the funding for that.
This makes me think about telemedicine and how during the pandemic, Adam, you were talking about some of the changes then, and that became something that was used thanks to things like Zoom, which nobody was really used to, and then all of a sudden we had to use it. And telemedicine, I think Kansas has been somewhat progressive in that area, and as I understand it, insurance companies were looking at, I think they did pay for that more so than they used to. It seems like it would be a good idea to continue that. Any ideas on what the state thinks about? I guess we're talking about insurance companies as well, but it seems like a good investment of money and effort.
Yeah, and that's another one of those things that was kind of forced on us due to the pandemic that people ultimately saw a really good benefit to, especially out in rural Kansas, Weskan, Kansas, out in northwest Kansas. You don't have to drive all the way to Hayes or Denver to see your doctor. Obviously, you cannot replace that person-to-person contact, but for follow-up appointments and things like that, if seniors don't have the ability to get in the car and go make their appointments and drive that distance, if they can just do some follow-up appointments and get help, that's been a great benefit, I think, to a lot of Kansans.
Would you agree, Susan?
Well, absolutely, I agree with everything you said, but I don't really feel like we are that progressive with it overall. It's been covered through the KEMA bill, through the emergency management, but I think Dr. Clifford could probably address that better than either one of us, because he's not only is he a physician, but he also sits on the health committee,
right.
And they have not dealt with that, but we're hoping for some payment penalties.
The Hospital Association has introduced a bill concerning telemedicine, because a lot of the funding for it is because we're still in an emergency here related to the pandemic. Some of that funding goes away when we declare that the pandemic has ended and this is an endemic situation. So I think insurance agencies and the Hospital Association will work together to continue that funding, because patients certainly have embraced it.
We want to talk to our next phone caller, and I apologize, I'm not hearing this very well. I believe we have Garrett from Downs. And Garrett, your question this evening? Oh, apparently we lost him. Hopefully he'll be able to call back. One of the things that we wanted to talk about again is going back to the CAPERS funding. And Susan, you were talking about that a little bit. I just wanted to clarify for people that, in case somebody doesn't realize what that is, why that's so important to so many people who live in Kansas, and it's maybe a long story. Maybe you can encapsulate it for us. Why did we get to the point where it really wasn't funded as fully as it should have been?
You know, we had a really healthy CAPERS program, but when we were going through some of the financial difficulties that we went through in the middle of the last decade, specifically under the Brownback tax plan, when we were having trouble making the budget balance every year, month to month even, we were skipping payments. We just didn't have the money to make the CAPERS payments.
Is that legal?
Yeah, it was legal. I mean, it's legal, but it does not. We went from having a very healthy retirement program for our employees to having to being ranked 49th out of 50 states.
Oh gosh!
Thank goodness for Illinois.
They must have been number 50. Huh?
Yes. Yeah.
So we're back on track.
Yeah. You know, we have some really some really smart people in the House and on appropriations, and specifically Representative Stephen Johnson from Salina that worked real hard on the with CAPERS when he first came in, and kind of did a reorganization of it probably 12 years ago, and that has us on the right foot, and really doing so well that a lot of the people who have been on CAPERS for a lot of years are wanting a cost of living raise. And you know, it's a defined benefit. It would be really difficult to do at this point because there are people, their benefit is already better than the newer ones that come on. But I can understand that their desire for that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Does I've always wondered, are there a large number, a large percentage of Kansans who do qualify for CAPERS as compared to other states?
I don't know how we
Don't know the
compare.
numbers. Don't know.
No, it's our state employees and our school teachers and
Firemen.
fire and police and
People who do important jobs.
Yes.
the public.
Let's go to the phones now. We have Eric on the line. And Eric, the question you have this evening for our legislators? Oh, we lost Eric again. Hopefully he can try to call us back. Okay, another thing that I thought we might talk about is a little bit about, and I think and again, as I said, I'm fairly new to meeting all of you, and I know that some of you support this. We had a former U.S. Senator come visit in Topeka earlier this week talking about an idea called the Constitutional Convention, and I know that has been discussed before, and we're kind of, with kind of a mix of state politics and national politics. Who would like to explain that to us? Okay, Bill, tell us what that is exactly.
I attended the hearing when Senator Santorum was there, Rick Santorum, and it was in the old Supreme Court room where we caucus as Republicans, and a packed house. I mean, it was theater. I'm like Senator Santorum, I'm kind of a convert to Convention of States. I resisted it for many years, thinking, well, we can't have a runaway convention and risk our disproportionate power. I mean, we're a democracy, but we're really a federalist republic, and small states like Kansas through the Senate have a lot of power because we have as many senators as California. So we wouldn't want to go into a constitutional convention and lose that because the big states tell us, well, we get more. But I think, again, guardrails are important to us in the legislature. And at that hearing, listening to the discussion, I'm convinced that the guardrails are there. 17 states have already said they want to participate. 34 states need to ratify in order to force Congress to call a constitutional convention. Anything that comes out of that convention has to be ratified by 39 states. So it's a really high bar to change our Constitution, rightfully so. But I'm convinced now, having run for Congress, that Washington will not fix itself. And I just think it's time to step up and change the dynamics and get back our power as states. I mean, we delegate power to Washington, but who thinks of it that way now? So I'm excited about the possibility, and it was a great hearing.
Is there any sort of deadline for that number of states to agree to do this?
No, unlike amendments that have set deadlines for passage by a certain number of states, it's just a process. So there is no time pressure. So we need to get 34 to have a convention of states.
What day was that hearing?
That was on Thursday morning.
I think I'll try to go back and watch that. And the public can go and watch any of those hearings too by going to the Kansas Legislature website, and then you go under the committees and you can.
It was a federal and state committee, and Representative Barker from Salina.
Federal and State Affairs.
Judge Barker, and he had a great hearing. He keeps order in the House, so it was exciting.
You know, one of the things to think about if you really study the Convention of States efforts, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Kansas already has one petition on the books for a balanced budget amendment. You can make petitions, but you have to clarify what those categories are, what they're talking about. I believe this one is term limits, balanced budget, and government overreach. So one of the things you have to consider that is not defined in the resolution is how the delegates to those conventions are set up, because that lies with Congress. So there's really no clear-cut way on how that would happen. It's never happened before. So there's some interesting dynamics that go along with it. I think you're going to see a lot more clarity. If we get up to like 29 or 30 states and we start getting close, I think you're going to see some of those people in Washington paying attention. Hey, how is this actually going to work? Would it be better to propose amendments or the other way to do it through Congress, just to avoid the Constitutional Convention?
That would be a big change, wouldn't it?
Yeah, at the hearing center, Stefan volunteered to be our delegate, but as you say, Adam, that hasn't been decided yet.
Absolutely.
We are going to go back to the telephones here for a moment, and hopefully we can now talk to Eric from Downs. And Eric, your question of the legislators this evening?
Yes, ma'am. I have two quick questions. One is, I'd like the legislature to look into using paraquat on the fees for the state. One of my friends used it, and he had several pheasants and rabbits in his field the next. It definitely killed wildlife, and we don't need to be doing that. We're already down with pheasants as it is for these hunters coming in here to hunt and everything. So that's one thing I would like to address. The other thing I like to say, that I was going to say something else, but I'd like to say this is more important. I've come from Delaware, and I was a 30-year volunteer fireman from Delaware, and I've seen how the firemen in some of these small towns, need more money for their departments. And just a suggestion, what they did in Delaware, so more money could be given from the state to the fire departments, the volunteers, and training and all that. They put a 2-cent tax on all the motels. So when you went into a motel, when you stayed in a motel, there was 1 or 2% tax put on the motels. That all went in a kitty for the whole state and divided out to the volunteer fire departments for training and just whatever that fire department needed for that station. So I have seen a big difference in the way that the county pays for fire departments, but the state does some training with the state, with Firemen Association. But I don't see what they do for them like we did out east. And I know we don't have the money like we had out east because they don't have a population like they have out there. But I think if we had a small tax on the motels where you stay, that's what Delaware did to give them more money for the fire stations for the state. We could do something like that to help out these departments.
Thank you, Eric. That's an excellent discussion topic because Kansas has a lot of volunteer firefighting groups, and we should be very thankful to them, and it's very timely because of our Four Counties fire that we had December 15th that occurred in this area. And you know, the rural firefighters, they just are volunteers. So is there a way, what do you think? Can the state help fund?
And I don't know where that funding is. There has been a hearing on that. It must be Spark funding. Any of that come through your committee, Adam? Or?
Not through tax.
Because
Well, we appropriate some money there, but yes, there's discussion of Spark money. The deal with Spark money is it needs to be one-time money. You know, it can't be towards something that's ongoing, and that's a great opportunity to buy equipment, and that's specifically what we were talking about. The idea of adding a tax, I appreciate having ideas always, but I'm a little leery of ever adding a tax, but what do you think, Mr. Taxman?
Well, I do know enough of the numbers to know a 0.1% on the statewide income tax would raise about $48 million. I'm not sure how that would look distributed once you get that out to all the local fire departments, if that would be enough to make an impact. I'm sure it wouldn't hurt, but yeah. It is a tax increase, and it's tough to get those through sometimes. But you know, the caller mentioned just putting it on motels. I don't know if that might actually be more appropriately administered, like the bed tax through your local communities. It wouldn't be a statewide sales tax. It would be the bed tax that they already charge for economic development and tourism. Maybe some of that money could go towards that, but that would be controlled at the local level with cities and counties.
Yeah, I agree, Adam, and that bed tax is the purview of the county commission. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's 6% in Finney County, but those monies are used to put more heads in beds, so it is used for economic development, promoting tourism right now. So, I mean, the caller could approach his local county commission, and especially if there is a great need for equipment and work locally. I'd recommend that.
Do most, I'm trying to think some of the statistics I've read. I know that there is a large amount of volunteer fire companies in the state of Kansas. Why is that, as opposed to, for example, again, Hayes, that I'm familiar with, we have professional firefighters at the city level, and then our volunteers for the county fire department, they have full-time jobs somewhere else, and right. Those employers are very good about letting them leave when there is an emergency. Why do we depend on that kind of system so much in Kansas?
We can't fund full-time.
Money.
We can't fund
money.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to. You know, when we first moved to Beloit, EMS was also volunteer, and they would run to the ambulance and go to a call. Now we do have employees that staff it full time now, but yeah, that's a lot of people that show up to work at a fire, and the small communities can't afford to have that full time. I back up a little bit on talking about the equipment. Another thing is that the bigger cities keep modernizing their equipment, and we are able as a state then to send those to our smaller communities to replace some of their aging equipment. Mm-hmm.
That's a good plan. We have another caller on the line now from Ness City. Gary is with us. And Gary, your question this evening of our legislators.
Yes, I thank the panel for their discussion. And I know Dr. Clifford, I am a veteran, I'm an American Legion member, and also on a wet walnut watershed district. My biggest concern on a redistrict of the Big Red 1 or first district is there's more population in the east that the voters from the west may lose our voice, and also the funding for repairing watershed dams and rehabbing projects seems to be cut every year. The dollars to rehab these projects, these dams have been in since 1980. And then also on the veterans side, the VFW and American Legion gets grants through the KCVA to fund our service officers at Wichita, Topeka, and Leavenworth. And we want to keep that funding there and hope it never drops. And at one point, there were some lottery tickets that had a yellow ribbon on that a portion of the revenues from these tickets went to veterans, and these yellow ribbons are no longer on these tickets. And we need to keep the funding for the veterans. Understand there is a third veterans hospital or home that is planned to be built somewhere around the Topeka area, which definitely needs to be.
All right, thank you, Gary.
I don't know how much time we have, but the Veterans Committee had the director of the lottery come in just this week to ask about that very ask about those tickets, and the sales were dropping off. They're a marketing organization, so they've repurposed tickets but that money is still going to benefit veterans. General Turner has taken over the Veterans Commission. He was a one-star general from Fort Riley, and he came in and briefed us. The care of veterans is alive and well in Kansas. I can reassure the caller. And being a veteran myself, and especially since my wife is a veteran and retired Air Force, I won't forget.
All right. Well, we thank all of our legislators for being with us this evening, and you for participating tonight. And we want to thank again, joining us is Dr. Bill Clifford from Garden City, also Representative Adam Smith from Weskan, and Representative Susan Concannon from Beloit. I'm Becky Kiser, your moderator for this evening. Thanks for joining us so much, and we'll see you again next week.
In our increasingly electrified society, that's where a resilient grid matters most. ITC Great Plains is ensuring the greater grid can meet our energy needs now and long into the future. Learn more at itc-holdings.com.